I actually started weirdly as a painter in high school, and I put in a portfolio. I got into UCLA's very conceptual art school. Within 3 months, I realized that I wasn't an artist. That actually what I enjoyed most is talking about art and thinking about art. And I would say it was that major decision, or that decision at a very young age, and the realization that I enjoy talking about art rather than making art, that kind of set me on this path towards the curatorial. So I switched from art school and I go into an art history program. My undergraduate thesis was on contemporary Chinese gardens in contemporary artist studios. And so I already at that point was kind of interested in the context around artists in addition to the works they made. I came back from school and my first job actually was in Singapore with art outreach. And so I already had some experience in the museum doing education when I was in school, because I worked part-time at a museum. But when I came back, I devoted myself sort of to that, thinking that, I wanted to spend more time talking about art all the time. That would be the best kind of job. And so that's what kind of drew me to art outreach, because art outreach had this amazing volunteer program. And I remember sort of like a faint memory of participating in that actually when I was a teenager. And and my first job with art outreach was, I think, as a special manager or something, and we did special projects. And I remember working with May, and we were developing education programs and discursive kind of mediation things for different age groups for the first exhibitions that opened at the Art Science Museum. So I remember one of the key shows we worked on was actually the tank shipwreck, which now is a permanent display at ACM. So that was 10 years ago. And then in terms of curatorial practice, after I left art outreach, I ended up working with the National Arts Council, because one of the things I did figure out when I was working at art outreach was that I was very committed, or I was very interested in working with artists directly. And then from there, I just on a lark decided to do Curating Lab, and Heeman and Ahmad Mashadi were the two, Heeman Chong and Ahmad Mashadi were the ones that organized that. And once I took that, I worked on a program we worked on a group exhibition with a number of artists and an architect and so forth on an exhibition called A History of Curating in Singapore. And the minute that happened, I think I was set on the curatorial path. I've been working on a number of exhibitions in the last year. Things have become, because of COVID, actually, we've had to install exhibitions digitally, which is a fascinating process, and a process that demands a lot of generosity on both ends. And actually what I found is, people don't naturally want to be generous, but when you're forced to be, you actually develop much healthier and robust and meaningful working relationships. And I think what's really changed is our appreciation of time and our appreciation of what art is, because we've been forced to actually take the time to think about these things and to really evaluate and prioritize what's important, right? And this is where I think the moment that the curatorial or the artistic practice really becomes important is carving out that space and time for that reflection that almost in the moment of crisis becomes impossible. I wasn't thinking of applying this year, and someone just mentioned to me that I should, and persistently asked me to do so, and actually was very generous in doing so, because I would never have thought about it. I was in the middle of fellowship applications. I was actually concerned about how I was going to finish my PhD research, in light of not being able to do research during COVID, and so yeah, I'm surprised, and it was really a nice experience applying, because I didn't expect this at all, and I was so flattered that someone even thought to say, like, hey, you should apply, and I didn't think about it. And so this is one of actually the highlights of my year. The award is a sense of recognition for work that I've been doing, and most of the time I think as an independent curator, you kind of just work and you produce research and you do research and you collaborate and you're just excited by what you're doing. And I guess this award in some way gives me a sense that people actually appreciate some of the work that I'm doing, which is always nice to hear. And it's nice to know, because then at least there is some, you see that you can understand that maybe there's some value to what you're doing, because obviously what we do can be seen as very esoteric to a lot of people. So that's one. The other thing that's very important, obviously, is the award provides resources that can be put towards research, that often are things that one absorbs upon themselves or finds other ways. So the flexibility of an award like this allows one to actually develop new projects in a much more safe sort of space. The idea to even have this award is pretty exceptional, because I don't know many other scenes that have it, and that have something comparable at such a young level, I would say, at emerging level. And I think it should not be, it should not go unsaid that having resources actually provides so much opportunity and privilege to someone wanting to develop a curatorial practice. And I sometimes am concerned in the Singapore art scene that because as we develop and professionalize at such a rapid rate, which is fantastic and great for us, and there's more opportunities now than there were before, one wonders also like who gets access to those opportunities, right? And how. And I think something like IMPART provides a kind of level playing field that anyone can have access to. Be committed to your research, and if there is a desire sometimes to be trendy so that you can get opportunities, and I can't say that I haven't been guilty of jumping on a trend or two, but I do feel like in the long term, what curatorial practice is a long-term investment. It's not something about turning up the coolest show, this year or next year, or I want to bank on the latest discourse. It really is about embodied experiences, alternative narratives, and those things take time to develop, and research takes time to develop. So my advice to a younger curator, maybe coming straight out of school, or I would say actually the advice I would give myself now if I was speaking to myself straight out of school, is take the time to research. And take the time to just invest in your practice. And don't feel pressured.